So, I've been going through some stuff lately, and in times like this, I'm sure like a lot of people, I like to have a distraction, something fun to take my mind off things. And often that's a movie or a video game, but more often than not, it's a TV show. Something with a consistent cast or creative vision can make those hard, lonely times feel just a little bit less so. And cruelly, the thing fate has deemed to be my comfort show in this past month or two is Glee. And let me tell you, this show really scratches that itch. It's ridiculous, it's fun.
People thought I went on vacation, but actually I spent the summer lost in the sewers.
It's goddamn insane sometimes. I can literally think of nothing else that could or would even dare to go from a school shooting to the Harlem Shake in under one episode. For better or worse, the show is something undeniably really special and unique, something that can't and probably shouldn't be imitated. Which, maybe that's understatement of the decade, considering how much of an institution this show was during its run, but damn if it ain't true. Even while the show, as many often do, slowly slides from genuinely good territory into pure guilty pleasure, it always retains this really unique charm, which is mostly brought out by the inherent melodrama of your average network teen drama being multiplied 1,000-fold when crossed with that pure, sugary sentimentality of a musical. To be honest, I can count the amount of musicals I'm truly passionate about on one hand, but for whatever reason, that lightning-in-a-bottle mix of teen drama and musical, plus a sprinkling of satirical comedy in the early seasons, just really hit the spot for me. Now, before we go any further, I just want to take this time to apologize to any of the OG Glee heads who might be watching this and re-experience some frightening memories. From what I understand, this show, did things to people. Am I over a decade late to talking about this show? Yep. Am I going to anyway? I guess so? For the few of you who might be unaware, Glee was an extremely popular show that aired from about 2009 to 2015, and focuses on this spunky little high school glee club from the middle of nowhere, Ohio, as they strive for greatness, or at least the closest to greatness a glee club can get.
You'll jump for joy at our prices.
Come on down to Madness Land!
In the show, the Glee Club is this magical place where a ragtag gang of misfits get to sing and dance their little hearts out, finding friendship, purpose, and even themselves along the way. And on that note, I want to talk about the musical numbers in the show for a bit. The numbers in this show exist in this weird little crossover of diegetic and non, or in less nerdy terms, things actually happening in the world of the story and things not. In text, these kids are relatively inexperienced, just finding their talents and their voices, but of course are played by actors who are all professionally trained singers and or dancers. Similarly, the backing band and choreography of the performances are light years ahead of what one might expect from a high school glee club, especially considering how often these numbers in universe only have a matter of hours or sometimes even minutes to prepare. So sometimes you'll have these questions pop into your head of, how did they learn this song so fast? Does this band know the chords to every single song in the world? Why does no one ever trip and fall mid-performance with so little prep time? But naturally, being a musical, like I said, there's an understood level of suspension of disbelief you gotta carry into it. These numbers aren't really happening as we see them. Well, sometimes they are, but again, you just need to suspend your disbelief. Glee exists in this little bubble where people don't mess up, dancers don't forget their choreography, and singers don't choke. While I do want you to keep in mind this kind of double reality brought on by the show being both musical in genre and musical in text, for the most part, as with all good musicals, these numbers exist to display the characters' emotions, their talents, and their growth. And of the many well-written, compelling, even heartwarming characters the show has to offer, today I want to focus on the absolute worst of them all. Rachel Berry. Rachel is an extremely talented, extremely driven person, constantly pursuing her one all-consuming ambition, becoming a Broadway star. Since the moment she popped out the womb, Rachel's every waking moment, every breath has been in service of that single goal, meticulously plotting out and training herself for her path to stardom.
It's all right here in my planner, you see.
Rachel is also a menace. A monster, self-centered and histrionic, almost to the point of delusion. She has little to no respect for her fellow Glee Club members, and frequently sabotages people she sees as threats. Like this one time, she sent a girl to a crack house because she was afraid of being upstaged.
I didn't send her to an active crack house.
Now, that said, none of those are inherently problematic traits for a character to have. Terrible people make for very compelling characters. The thing is, Rachel is also the main character of the show. Again, not inherently a problem, but as usual, it all comes down to execution. Rachel is often challenged by her fellow Glee Club members, calling out her insane behavior and urging her to take a step back, consider the world outside of herself. And she never listens. Rachel never learns her lesson, not really. They might pretend she's had some kind of awakening to the thoughts and feelings of the people around her, but within an episode or two, it's back to the same old thing. Even while other characters in the Glee Club grow and change pretty significantly around her, Rachel stays stagnant. While this is easier to ignore in Season 1, where the show feels like much more of an ensemble cast, it becomes a glaring flaw once you hit Season 2 and Rachel truly takes center stage.
Rachel's what you'd call a controlist.
I'm controlling. Controlist isn't a word. I'm controlling. Performing is my life. And yes, do I have opinions about it? Does my need to constantly express those opinions annoy my fellow Glee Clubbers?
Yes.
Throughout the first season or so, Rachel is kept in check, in a way, by Quinn Fabray, the school's head cheerleader who harbors an actually pretty justifiable hate boner for Rachel.
Time for some girl talk.
But as we go through Season 2, Quinn becomes more and more of a background force in the show, which, more than anything, really represents just how invested the showrunners eventually become in making sure Rachel never has any real strife or struggle to weigh her down. This is when the show hits what I call the Rachel wins lol era. In which Rachel starts to feel less like a character on the show and more like some ominous, all-powerful being whose shadow looms over Glee's world, puppeteering the show's events to her whims. No matter what she does, no matter how awfully she treats the people around her, she is always forgiven. Her actions are always justified and more often than not, rewarded.
She may be difficult, but boy, can she sing. Bravo!
While other members of the club might not get a solo for episodes or even seasons at a time, Rachel consistently gets a number to herself each episode, sometimes as many as 3 or 4, often turning other characters' numbers into duets, even when it doesn't make narrative or emotional sense for her character in that episode. Whenever an episode does focus more on other members of the cast, you can bet with near certainty that no matter how little she's been involved in the story thus far, Rachel will be singing a heartstring-tugging ballad at the end, and she will be crying an uncomfortable amount. Even in a larger ensemble number, Rachel will inexplicably get way more camera coverage than the others, sometimes more than the people actually singing the damn song. The best way I can describe it is that this massive overexposure, plus the show's apparent unwillingness to test her character at all, can often make it feel like Rachel Berry is a real person who really exists, and she has a gun to the head of everyone writing on the show. This is all without mentioning the alleged strange on-set behavior of Rachel's actress Lea Michele, but I'm not going to go there because I honestly don't know and I don't really care. But suffice to say, people hated Rachel, and still do to this day. It's almost an unspoken rule of Glee fandom. Talk to anyone who's seen the show, and 9 times out of 10, they'll end up crying into your shoulder about the demonic presence that is Rachel Berry. Like I said, this show does things to people. The Rachel wins lol era continues on through Season 3, and honestly through the entire show. But this 3rd season is also where the specific story I want to talk about begins. This season, Rachel and most of the other characters are entering their final year of high school, their final year in the Glee Club. While many of them plan to go through more conventional universities or colleges unrelated to the song and dance of it all, the end of high school means something a little different for Rachel. After years of performances and competitions, years spent building her confidence and honing her skills in the Glee Club, she's reached the end of her path, the furthest point that the club can take her, and is finally ready to take the first real step towards her dream. Rachel, as well as her friend Kurt, who's a similarly frustrating character, but I do not have time for him, are both auditioning for the fictional New York Academy of the Dramatic Arts, or NYADA for much shorter. After teasing this audition out for a good chunk of the season while Rachel racks up even more contractually obligated wins, the day of the audition finally comes in episode 18, entitled Choke. Don't worry about it. The episode opens with a surprisingly rare window into Rachel's inner monologue, something we haven't actually gotten since the early episodes of Season 1. This, plus the actual content of her voiceover, reminds us of way back in the good old days, back before Rachel became a crazy person who sent people to crack houses.
I didn't send her to an active crack house.
Back when she was just an awkward, bright-eyed, ambitious kid, and in many ways still is, but also highlights just how much she's grown through the show, both in her abilities and her confidence in them. I can't speak for the legions of other Rachel haters out there, but for me, this kind of wipes the slate clean in some ways. If nothing else, using the voiceover for this episode kind of re-centers Rachel's character, and it helps remind the viewer of why this character was, at one point, someone they wanted to root for. Honestly, I think it kind of speaks to the power an inner monologue like this, even a poorly executed one, has. Take the show You, for example. This show follows serial killer and all-around strange guy Joe Goldberg through all his misguided attempts to find love and all the people he kills on that quest. When you're in his head, hearing all his thoughts and his justifications for every decision through voiceover, you can almost buy into this view he has of himself as this masterful, calculating killer, or at the very least as this person who really desperately wants love. But as soon as you're out of his head without his inner monologue to ground the show and guide your viewing experience, you realize something. This guy is a fucking idiot and has no idea what he's doing at any point and does not care for a single soul besides himself. But I digress. The same idea is at play here for Rachel, just in reverse. And yes, I do realize I'm comparing a high schooler to a serial killer, but trust me, if you knew Rachel like I did, you would do the same. But anyways, that's all just to illustrate that this is a really effective means of getting us back in Rachel's corner, which is going to be really important for what's to come. Now, this episode also focuses on two other more minor storylines. Puck, the school's resident bad boy and incurable dumbass, studying for his final make-or-break test, which will decide whether he graduates or whether he repeats senior year. And the football team's coach Beast, dealing with her recent separation from her abusive husband and trying to gather her will to stay away from him. Even though one of these storylines is a little more dire than the other two, these two B-plots frame Rachel's story in a similar light just by association. Like Puck and Beast, Rachel is an underdog. Despite her natural talent and all the training and practice she's had, she's still relatively inexperienced, stepping out into this big, terrifying world that she loves and worships so much. We can probably assume Kurt feels the same way, but he doesn't get as much focus in this episode. What we do get from this episode is that he is still not quite sure what he's going to perform for this audition, planning on a bunch of different songs much further out of his comfort zone, but eventually Rachel convinces him to sing a song he's much more familiar with, as she's doing.
All right, this is the biggest moment in our lives here. We cannot be taking risks.
Isn't that the exact moment to take a risk?
For her audition, Rachel is singing what at this point is her signature song, Don't Rain on My Parade from the musical Funny Girl. She's been obsessed with this song for just about her entire life, to the point where singing it comes almost as naturally as breathing. She even sang it on the show once before, way back in the season 1 finale. Pulling on both Rachel's and the audience's experience, this song is triumphant for her. It's almost like a good luck charm. Finally, after weeks of waiting, the day of the audition finally arrives, but first, Rachel and Kurt are met with some surprising news, although I don't know how they weren't given this information beforehand, but whatever. Their auditions will be overseen by Carmen Thibodeau, NYADA's famously ruthless and perfectionist dean of vocal performance, a former singer and performer herself who's seen all the wonders of the world and was left unimpressed. This is the woman overseeing Rachel and Kurt's audition, and the person who will ultimately decide their fates. The two of them somehow only learn this right before their auditions, and although it wigs them out like crazy, there's nothing left to do but push forward.
Kurt Hummel.
Kurt goes up first, planning to sing the song he'd been practicing for the last couple days, but when he introduces the song and is met with an openly bored and unimpressed reaction, he decides to change gears, belting out a characteristically confident and flamboyant rendition of Not Just the Boy Next Door on the fly, and he even seems to genuinely impress the usually stone-faced Thibodeau. Next, it's Rachel's turn. Although Kurt's success with a song he pulled entirely out of his ass shakes her resolve a little bit, she's still determined to push ahead with her go-to song. After years of training and practice, Rachel's moment is finally here. All of the doubts and fears, all the slushies to the face, will all seem like child's play once she finally proves to everyone who she is, who she's always known herself to be, a star. And so she walks out onto the stage, introduces herself, and...
Don't tell me not to live, just sit and putter. Life's candy and the sun's a ball of butter. Don't bring around a cloud to rain on my parade. Don't tell me not to fly, I've simply got to. Life's candy and the sun's a...
She chokes. It is horrifying to watch, and try as she might, Rachel just can't recover. Unimpressed, Thibodeau stops the audition and leaves Rachel in tears, standing alone on the stage with her dream falling to pieces around her. Now, personally, I consider this to be one of, if not the most important and most impactful moments in the show, for a number of reasons. When I say this moment's horrific, I don't just mean that it's excruciatingly sad, awkward, and embarrassing, I mean it in a literal sense as well. This moment uses the same sort of techniques of subversion that a horror movie might for a good scare, or on the other end of the spectrum, the setup and payoff you'd expect from a joke in a comedy.
Can I use your restroom really fast?
At this point, the show has conditioned you for almost 3 full seasons now to expect these elaborate, expertly crafted musical numbers multiple times per episode, almost to the point of desensitization. In Glee's world, those numbers are a safe space. They're where the characters express themselves, reconcile their differences, and resolve their conflicts. They pour their hearts out, get thunderous applause, and everyone can hug it out in the end. But, in a way, Rachel bombing so spectacularly destroys that line separating the reality of Glee from the dream world that musicals inhabit. The choke is a shock to the system. This doesn't happen in Glee. It defies everything it's built up to this point, everything we know about the way this show and its world works. This time, there's no dream world to escape into. No song can fix or help rationalize what's happened. Rachel fails at this critical point in her life because of who she is, and no amount of training or preparation can prepare her for the disastrous combination of bad luck and nerves. Like the Mike Tyson once said, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. But Rachel's never had to deal with something like this before, and it's exactly that same inexperience with failure that spells her doom in this moment. Anyone can stumble, even performers much more experienced than Rachel, but what really counts is the recovery, or the lack thereof in this case. If she'd pushed through the song and continued singing despite fumbling a line or two, she could have still shown Thibodeau her undeniable ability to perform. But she can't do that. Rachel needs to perform perfectly. She needs to be perfect. In an ironic and cruel twist of fate, that same perfectionism and hubris that's helped her succeed so many times, that's brought her to this point, is the very same thing that leads her to choke in this moment, and to ultimately flunk her audition. This moment kind of reestablishes the stakes of the show for just about every episode to come. After 3 straight seasons of constant singing and dancing, it can all feel a little routine and formulaic, almost robotic. But through Rachel's choke, this episode reminds you just what's at stake for all of these characters, and what these goofy little songs mean to them, how just one moment of hesitation or doubt can bring it all crashing down. It's a legitimately genius way to kind of breathe a new life and purpose into not just the show, but even Rachel herself as a character, and we get no better demonstration of that newfound potential than in the closing scenes of this episode. After her audition, Rachel is devastated. Everything she's been working towards, that pie-in-the-sky ideal of stardom she's had her whole life, even the person she sees herself as, has all gone up in smoke. And of course, like dozens and dozens of episodes before, it's here that we get the contractually obligated Rachel solo to close out the episode. But this time, it's different. It really means something. While Rachel sings a legitimately really moving cover of Demi Lovato's Cry while she mourns the death of her dream, we cut over to the other storylines for the episode, of Puck failing his test despite his best efforts, and of Beast who ultimately went back to her abusive husband, with failure being the thing tying them all together. And not just a trivial one-off moment you can wash off with a song and a dance, but the kind of moment that shakes you to your core, makes you question everything you know about yourself. You aren't smart enough, you aren't strong enough, you just aren't good enough. And for a show that can often be really light and fluffy, especially in the later seasons, I think this episode is a vital piece of its puzzle, in the way it grapples with this darker and unfortunately real side of chasing a dream. This idea that sometimes you do everything you can, try to the best of your abilities, and still lose out in the end. But I think for our purposes, what's most exciting about this episode is the potential of what comes after: redemption. After suffering these devastating defeats, each character finds themselves at a crossroads. Either they cut their losses, accept defeat, and move on, or they keep pushing, find another way, some other avenue towards their dream. And while the other two storylines, particularly Beast's, are criminally underexposed as the show goes on, Rachel's takes center stage, and for once is the most compelling. In what I consider a superhuman feat after how unbearable of a character she's been for just about the entire show thus far.
What? Oh, you don't speak English. You like me sing. You like me sing very much.
You are now completely behind Rachel, where just one episode ago there was a mean, spoiled, entitled, and selfish person. Now stands someone different. She's seen how quickly it can all go up in smoke, and just how much of her dream she had taken for granted. And with this epiphany, Rachel is finally given the opportunity to turn over a new leaf, to grow not just as a performer and an artist, but as a person. She has a chance to recognize her flaws and really reckon with the person she's becoming, and who she wants to be. On a meta level, this also gives the show the extremely rare opportunity to take a frustrating, almost universally reviled character and turn her into something truly special and powerful. And for a brief, beautiful moment, the show makes good on that promise. Having been brought to this low point, Rachel is now Glee's fallen hero, whose one thought is reclaiming the glory and the status she feels she deserves. And for the next 3 episodes or so, this makes for a legitimately compelling storyline, as Rachel now has to lean on the other members of the club, these people she's taken for granted all this time, for their love and support while she builds herself back up and prepares to take another crack at Nyada and Carmen Thibodeau.
Madam Thibodeau, hello. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's me, Rachel Berry. I'm sorry, I really...
By the end of this 3rd season, Rachel does ultimately end up proving herself to Carmen and earning her spot at Nyada, the season ending with her tearfully saying her goodbyes to the Glee Club and leaving to follow her dreams in New York. Rachel's character, like many things in Glee, reaches what feels like its natural endpoint here, at the end of Season 3. But, as with anything popular and profitable, the show very literally must go on, and Season 4 opens with Rachel in New York, where she functionally resets as a character. All the growth from those last few episodes of Season 3 has vanished, and with apex predator Quinn Fabray having been snapped out of existence, Rachel now has free reign over the entire show, and the Rachel Wins Lol era returns with a vengeance. Rachel gets everything she wants and more, immediately, and with minimal effort. After just a few months at NYADA, Rachel gets cast in the lead role for a Broadway revival of her dream musical, Funny Girl, for which she quits NYADA entirely.
Okay, for the last time, Rachel, I am begging you, please don't do this.
You know, I am so hurt right now that you are standing in the corner with a failure like Carmen Thibodeau and not your best friend.
Then, less than a month after opening night, she quits the show after she is offered a blank check TV pilot by the dean from Community.
Okay, you get this wrong one more time, I'm segregating the school.
Just to reiterate, this all just happens. Just like before, Rachel succeeds automatically. There's no struggle here, and as such, there's no story. And it's at this point in writing that I hit a block. This story doesn't have a satisfying conclusion. Ultimately, Rachel doesn't change, the writing around her doesn't change, and no one learns much of anything. And so the question becomes, why did I watch this show? Why did I make this video? What was the point of any of this? Now, those are all very broad questions, but I guess my answer boils down to this. That lack of satisfaction, all those flaws, even those things that seem like outright mistakes, they don't make this show or the experience of watching it any less valuable. As much as I or anyone might try to say a certain thing is good and something else bad, there's really no objective black and white truth to any of it, and it's ultimately not about that, as they say. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Art is this weird, chaotic gray area, one that, to an extent, is defined by its imperfections, whether it be as blunt as look at that stormtrooper hitting his head against the door, or something more abstract, like the medium of film itself as this kind of flawed record and reproduction of reality. Those flaws and those imperfections are inherent to all of this, and to anything made by human hands. Personally, I spend a lot of time thinking about these things that are more flawed. In fact, a lot of the stuff I love the most are these weird, misshapen little things, little freaks that I can add to my collection. And to an extent, I think that's true for everyone. We all have our guilty pleasures, our comfort food, things that feel like they're made just for you, and no one else quite understands it like you do. They could be the trashiest thing on planet Earth, or go against everything you know to be characteristic of what's quality or what's good, but you're still drawn to it nonetheless. And to me, that's kind of what the experience of art is all about. You see these imperfections or these gaps in things, even subconsciously, and you fill them in with little pieces of yourself. And to be clear, this doesn't just apply to things that might be guilty pleasures or so bad it's good or whatever you want to call it. This is how I think all art and all interpretation of it works. Something is presented to you and you internalize it. You draw upon your past experiences, your mindset, even your personality to interpret it. And in the process, make that thing just a little bit your own. And I think that's why people have such an intense and personal relationship with these things. To anyone else, it might just look like 24 different images, but to you, it's movement, it's magic. There's so much to be experienced in this realm of things that might be imperfect or even mistakes. Stories that might be contradictory or self-defeating or even unfinished all have that same innate value. And although you may never hear me admit it outside of, right now, even things you might hate on principle, be it gross corporate slop or actual, genuine, terribly produced fascist propaganda, are still valuable, if nothing else as an example of what not to do or what to avoid. And at the risk of sounding even cornier than I already do, there's ultimately value and meaning in any experience, negative or positive. And to bring it back to the actual point of the video, to me, that idea is what this episode of Glee, and to an extent the entire show, embodies. If you really boil it down, the show is about accepting who you are, and all that weirdness, those idiosyncrasies, even those shortcomings that make you, you. And I think at the end of the day, what makes this particular episode so powerful is that it takes into account those personal, deep, and cutting failures. And to me, what it says is that there's value and opportunity. There's even beauty in that failure. And despite whatever issues I might have with the specifics, throughout the rest of the show, Rachel kind of comes to symbolize that idea. The idea that in moving past your worst moments or your most crippling defeats, in accepting your failures and the person they've made you, that is the mark of true greatness. Ironically, in its failure to fully commit to that idea or that storyline, Glee, in a bizarre way, comes to represent that idea better than it could otherwise. Sure, Glee might be weird and poorly thought out, sometimes to the point of feeling pointless. But there is meaning in that meaninglessness, there is something in that nothing. And at the end of the day, that is what Rachel as a character means to me. She's frustrating, a genuinely bad person, and more often than not, she makes no sense. But this episode reminds us that even in this raging tornado of a person, there's still hope, there's still purpose, there's a beating heart here. And to me, that's what ultimately makes this episode such a key and revealing piece of the show's story. What makes it such a core part of the show's identity and philosophy. That's what makes it the most important episode of Glee. And I think that's all I got for today. Sorry for the long wait on this one. I know it's probably not what you were expecting, so hope you didn't get Yakuza blue balls from this or anything like that. I kind of regret saying that already. And if you're a Glee person, thanks for giving me a shot. I don't normally go here, so I hope I didn't kill the vibe, hope I didn't get it wrong. But yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I guess I will see you next time.
It is the most annoying thing they've ever done.